Hello, good morning. Welcome, welcome. Seeing people join. We are so thrilled to have you here with us this morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Goodman Speakers webinar with Kevin Brown, Conquering Kryptonite, which seems all too relevant these days. But we promise it's not going to be all negative. If any of you know Kevin, you know that he's a really positive guy, great speaker. So we're thrilled to be partnering with him today. April 30th, the last day of April Autism Awareness Month, which is very near and dear to my heart and Kevin's. So we're just thrilled to be partnering today of all days as well. And thank you for spending some time with us. So, welcome to the virtual presentation. I say that because it's important that we acknowledge this is not a virtual keynote. It looks and feels a little different. It's informal. It's a virtual presentation. Some of Kevin's virtual, keynote will be in this talk today, his keynote of the hero effect. So you'll see some pieces of that, but as promised, we're really going to get into a topic that is tailored for you all today, the conquering Kryptonite, as we are all experiencing challenges daily. So our speaker, Kevin, for nearly 20 years, he built a little-known family business into the #1 brand in their industry with revenue over nearly $2 billion. Yes, that is a B, billion. In the meantime, he learned a thing or two about overcoming adversity, facing challenges, and creating a culture for organizational excellence and customer loyalty. So that's kind of his street cred. That's why, we're bringing him to you. He's the author of The Hero Effect, as I mentioned, which his keynote goes by the same name. Very popular, cult-like following to his keynote and book, The Hero Effect. So you're going to see some pieces of that today. If this is an introduction to Kevin Brown, I am thrilled that you're here with us. If this is you joining because you love Kevin and you need this personally and professionally in your life, I'm thrilled to have you here as well. So without further ado, our friend and partner, Kevin Brown.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Jenna, thank you so much for that, and welcome to everybody. It is April 30th, last day of April, and I'm sure most everybody is sheltering in place because that's what we're doing now. It seems like, the whole world is kind of turned upside down, and truly my honor to be with all of you. I told Jenna, one of the reasons that I'm so excited about spending time with you all is I come from your world. And I don't mean that as a keynote speaker, I mean that as a planner. I was in the planning side of things for a long time. The last 20 years of my career, I spent on the planning side of the house. I know what it's like to put meetings together. And what you do is so extraordinarily valuable to people. And I think we realize that so much now as we live in this world where everything's changed, everything stopped. I mean, in the last 4 years, I retired from my corporate gig about 4 years ago. And in 4 years, we've been able to go to over 500 audiences and share this message called The Hero Effect, and could never feel more blessed to do what I do. And I get up every day excited about the idea of being able to move people from where they are to someplace new, which is exactly what you all do. Every single day, you have an opportunity to move people from where they are to someplace new. And I can't think of another time in history when that is more important than now. And even though our path has changed, our goals haven't changed, right? We still want to move people. The goal doesn't change, but the path changed, and our path has most certainly changed. And I never in a million years thought I'd be doing a virtual event. And everything changes. Now, I think about a quote from Robert Frost. Robert Frost said, "The brain is a marvelous organ." He said it begins working the minute we get up in the morning, and it doesn't stop until the minute we get to the office. I don't know about you, but that has never been more true than right now. I'm not used to working from home. I'm used to being on the road, and there's different things to contend with when you're working at home. For example, I've never one time thought about taking the stage and having to remind myself to put pants on. Doing a virtual event is very different. My wife reminded me this morning. She said, "Baby, don't forget to put your pants on." And so you got to be thinking about things like that. And the other thing my wife told me, and if you know me, if you know my story, you know how important my wife is to my story. You know how important she is to my life. I married way, 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 way over my head. I married a real life Wonder Woman. And my wife, Lisa, she's been my bride for 24 years. I do everything she tells me to do, mainly because I'm afraid she might leave. And this morning we had a conversation, and she said, you've got the best of the best in the meeting planning business. You've got Goodman's partners. You've got people who really care about other people, who care about creating an experience. She said, I want you to remember to do a couple of things. I want you to give them everything you've got. Share some ideas with them that would be of value to them. Add value to people, Kevin. That's what we're all called to do. And then the last thing she said to me was, don't forget to smile. And she says it for a lot of reasons. Number one, she knows smiling is the gateway to connecting. We draw people in, we tear down walls with a simple smile. The second reason she tells me that is because she knows I have a very poor resting face. She knows that smiling is not natural to me. And so I always need that reminder, especially now in critical times like this. You know, we have to remember that we have influence over people, whether it's through our expressions, our body language, and now even more than ever before, our language. Our language, you and I, we're in the business of language. We're in the business of communicating. We're in the business of moving people and sharing ideas, helping them to see the world through a different lens. And if the world ever needed to be seen through a different lens, it's most certainly now. I think what you do is so incredibly important to this time. And what I hear so often in the midst of crisis is language tends to be the first thing to go. People start to panic. And by all means, you have my permission to panic, but panic should only last for about 24 hours. You see, the great ones, the people who can move people from where they are to someplace new, the people who have something to add value to others, you see, they don't spend a whole lot of time in the panic mode. They know that no good decisions are made when we panic. And so as I think about this time with you all, and I think about this idea of heroes, you know, this idea goes back more than a decade. A decade ago, I was asked one simple question. I was asked by a friend of mine if I would speak to his group of franchise owners, 2,000 people, and they wanted me to talk about the idea of heroes. And up to that point in my speaking career, I'd never even considered talking about heroes. I was a corporate executive. I did a little bit of speaking, but I'd done the normal kinds of things: leadership, vision, communication, the kinds of things that most every speaker on the planet talks about. And they asked me to talk about heroes. And I have to tell you, from that day until now, my life has never been the same. I wrote down a simple question. You know, I live with my yellow pad. I always have my yellow pad with me. And when my friend asked me to give a story or a speech about what it means to be a hero, I wrote down one question. And the question was, what does it mean to be a hero? What does a hero look like? And since 2007, I've been chasing that one question. I've asked thousands of people what it means to be a hero. And everybody I've ever asked to define the word hero, they've all said heroes are ordinary people who do extraordinary things. And I bet you've heard that too. I bet you've heard that definition of a hero: ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And the first time I heard it, I wrote it down. It seemed reasonable to me. But I have to tell you, the more times I heard it, the more uncomfortable I became with that definition. The more times I heard that definition, the more it didn't sit well with me. I understood why most people say it. It comes from some sense of humility. It's a conditioning process. We're taught to think of heroes as ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But what I've learned on this journey of more than a decade is that heroes are anything but ordinary. Heroes are anything but ordinary. You see, our definition of a hero is that heroes are extraordinary people who choose not to be ordinary. And when I got that definition, when I realized that our language has been bad, we've been communicating ineffectively about this idea of what it means to be a hero, that's when everything changed for me. You see, heroes are extraordinary people who choose not to be ordinary. And if there was ever a time in human history when we need to choose not to be ordinary, it's right now in the midst of COVID-19. You know, everything has changed. When I listen to people, they say, this is the new normal. This is not the new normal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a season. This is a moment in time. This is a moment in time when we face some kryptonite in our life. One of the questions I'm most often asked by my clients is how do you keep from slipping backwards? If we're extraordinary people choosing not to be ordinary, how do we keep our superpowers intact in the midst of crisis? How do we deal with the kryptonite in our life? And I thought that was an interesting question. CEO of a bank asked me that question. He said, what about the kryptonite, Kevin? What about the things in our life that make us weak? And if you remember the story of Superman, that kryptonite is what robbed him of his strength. That kryptonite is what made him weak and ineffective. And that's exactly what happens in our world. And there are two types of kryptonite. There are external forces, things like a coronavirus, things like the economy, things like unemployment, things like sickness, things that are thrust upon us from the outside world that make us weak, that rob us of our strength. External forces, things beyond our control. But there are also internal forces. Internal forces like our thinking, internal forces like our conditioning, internal forces like other people's opinions, internal forces like how we respond or react to situations that are thrust upon us. You know, one of the things that I know about the great ones have the ability to show up and bring a sense of certainty during uncertain times. You know, when I was a little boy, I lost my grandmother when I was 10 years old. And my grandmother was a superhero in my life. My grandmother, she let me get away with things that I couldn't do at home. And she let me have treats, and she played with me, and we would color and we would talk and we would laugh for hours. My grandmother was very important to me. And when I lost her, I was 10 years old and my life was shattered. It was a crisis in my life. I was devastated. I was lost without her. And there are going to be times of crisis. There are going to be times when we feel like we're lost. When I was 26 years old, I lost my mother. Now, my grandmother was 53 years old, and she had to deal with some kryptonite, cancer. An external force took over her life, and it robbed her of her strength. And my mother was 54 years old when she passed. I was 26 years old, and again, my life thrust into crisis. A moment in my life when I was lost and I felt weak and helpless. And I'll never forget my father who's also one of my greatest heroes, my dad. My dad sat me down at 26 years old, and he told me something that has stayed with me. I'm 52 now. My dad told me something that was very powerful. My dad said, son, we can't change the things that happen to us. We can only change the things that happen in us. My dad told me, he said, son, we have to gain strength in the good times so that we don't get weak in the bad times. He said, bad things are going to happen. Things beyond our control are going to be brought into our life. He said, we can only control what happens in us. My dad continues to be a powerful influence in my life. You know, when I was a kid, I believed in heroes. When I was a kid, I used to tie a bath towel around my neck, and I would run through the house pretending to be Superman, pretending that I could fly. I would run through the house and I would jump off the furniture pretending to fly, off the couch, and I would go 3 feet, and off the cabinets, and I would go 5 feet. And I remember one time I had my cape on, and I went outside and I climbed the tree next to our garage. And I got on the roof of the garage and I walked right to the edge, and I looked down at the driveway below. I looked out at the big blue sky. I gave the cape a tug. You know, sometimes we have to trust the cape. And I put my arms out and I closed my eyes and I took a deep breath and I jumped and I flew straight down, landed in the driveway, splat. And in one superhuman leap, my mom from the house to the driveway swooped in, picked up her baby boy, dusted me off, checked me for bruises. She kissed me right here on the forehead. And then she spanked me like I've never been spanked before in my life. And from that moment on, Superman was grounded. And in times like this, in moments of crisis, I wonder what that kid would do. You know, I wonder what that kid would do. You know, because that kid thought he could fly. That kid thought that he had something special. That kid believed that he could overcome, that he could conquer, that he could do anything that he set his mind to. He believed that he had superpowers. You know, when we were kids, we had this uncanny ability to see life not as it was, but as it could be. We could see each other not as we are, but as we should be. But somewhere along the line, we outgrow this ability to take our present reality and see it for something other than what it is. And one of the things that I've learned about great leaders, about the heroes of our time, if you think about all of the people who are showing up right now, from our healthcare workers to our farmers to our grocers to our truck drivers to meeting planners to moms and dads, educators, people whose worlds have been turned upside down. And although the goal hasn't changed, our path has changed. We've had to find new ways to connect, new ways to educate, new ways to serve the people who count on us the most. And if you think about all of these people who are rising up, they found that inner child. They found that kid who believed that he or she could fly. They tapped into that untapped potential. They tapped into that reserve that has always been there, but it gets covered up with life's junk. It gets covered up with the kryptonite that gets thrust upon us. You see, kryptonite is an invisible force that lives in our life. It's an invisible force that keeps us inside the boundaries of what we think is possible. For 17 years, my wife Lisa and I had the immense pleasure of being parents to a dog daughter named Chelsea. And we lost Chelsea recently. And Chelsea was a Bichon Poodle mix, and she was a piece of work. And we loved that little girl. We loved that little girl so much. And when we moved into a house, when Chelsea was just a baby, we moved into a house. And as she got older, she loved to play outside and she loved to be in the yard, but our yard didn't have a fence. And we weren't allowed to build a fence because the neighborhood didn't want fences. And so my wife did the research and we decided to put in an invisible fence. And you all know how this works. You bury the cables around the perimeter of the house, all around the yard. We buried the cables. And then Chelsea wore a collar that let her know the cables were there. And the boundaries were designed to keep Chelsea inside of her yard. Even though she had the potential to go outside of the boundaries, she'd been conditioned, she'd been trained to know that the boundaries were there, even though she couldn't see them. And that's what happens in times like this. In times like this, that invisible fence exists around us, those boundaries that we place around ourselves, the box, we call it the box at work. The box that we live in, the box that we talk about, the one that's so vile we have to say things like think outside the box. And the truth of the matter is, the great ones, the ones who incite change, the ones who move people from where they are to someplace new, the ones who truly make a difference in this world, they've learned how to execute at a high level inside the box. Coronavirus is just another box that we're living in. Coronavirus, COVID-19 is the season of our life. This is our time to shine in this world. This is our season. And there's really no better time. There's no better time in the history of man to be alive than now, because this is our time. This is our time to show the world what we can do. This is our time to show the world how we respond in the face of crisis. I hear people in their language. I told you, language gets really bad in times of crisis. I've heard people talking about reinventing ourselves. We have to reinvent ourselves. I have speaker friends who are saying, we need to reinvent ourselves. And now is not the time to reinvent yourself. You see, in crisis, you don't reinvent. In crisis, you're revealed. In the moments of crisis, you are revealed for exactly who you are. In the midst of a crisis, we find out if you prepared in the good times to serve people in the bad times. You see, when we're flying high, when things are going well, we forget about staying sharp. We forget about getting stronger. We forget about sharpening the saw. You see, we can't give what we do not have. And when it's required most of us, when we have to give the most, are in these times of crisis, you see. That's when people depend on us the most. Did we do the work in the good times to be able to serve in the bad times? One of the things that I'm most frustrated with personally is that I didn't do the things in the good times. I didn't diversify my book of business. I didn't develop that new keynote. I didn't write that next book. I didn't do the breakout sessions. I didn't work on videos or a podcast or all of the things that I should have been doing to be prepared for the bad times. You see, the goal never changes. The path always changes. The path, the steps to get us where we're going, it changes constantly. It's subject to the winds of change, the kryptonite that is thrust upon us. When we were kids, we talk about that box. When we were kids, we had perfect creativity and innovation. When we were kids, we could spend all day in a plain old cardboard box. I remember when I was a kid, we lived for the day when somebody in our neighborhood would buy a washer or dryer. We would run across the street and we would grab that box and we would take it to the backyard. And we would turn that box into a spaceship, a race car, an army fort. We could turn it into anything that we imagined it to be. The sky wasn't even the limit. We could turn it into our heart's desire in an instant. And now more than ever, I think that same creativity, that same innovation that we had when we were kids is required of all of us now. You see, the great ones have the ability to see what everyone else sees, but to understand it differently. To see what everybody else sees and understand that we're in a season. We're in a season and we need to find new ways to connect with each other. We need to find new ways to serve each other. We need to find new ways to do what we do. But let me share this with you. I want to encourage you. Meetings are not going anywhere. I had somebody tell me the other day, somebody that I care very much about. They told me that meetings were going to go away, that the future of our business was going to be virtual. And I couldn't disagree more. I think virtual is a component to what we do, but meetings are never going to go away. And I will tell you this, meetings and events will become the salve that helps heal the hearts of people on the backside of this crisis. What you do matters now more than ever before. Oh, it's mattered up to this point. When you create an event where people can come and they can be edified, where they can fellowship, where they can learn and they can network and they can grow, when they can come and leave better than they showed up, that is vitally important, but it's never been more important than it is right now. Because the need for human connection is more evident now than ever before. We can exchange information over a computer screen. We can learn over a computer screen, but we cannot connect at the cellular level here. Not here. Here. We can't do that over a computer screen the way that we can do it when we're live with one another, when we wrap our arms around each other, when we shake each other's hands, when we look into each other's eyes, when we spend time connected and growing together. Oh, what you do matters in big ways and small ways, and it will help this world heal. It will help heal the kryptonite that has been thrust upon this world. What you do matters. Please don't ever lose sight of what you do. I'm in awe of what you do every single day. And the storyline of our life right now, this virus, this temporary season that we're in, it will pass. But on the backside of this, hopefully the work that we do during this season, hopefully the things that we're doing to grow, the things that we're doing to be creative, the things that we're doing to diversify our work, the things that we're doing to be connected to the people who mean the most to us, will be a platform, a jumping off point for when this is over, so that we can truly make a difference. We can truly influence people. If you know my story and the story of my family at all, you know about my son. His name is Josh Brown. And Jenna alluded to this. My son has autism. And when he was 5 years old, we were given a diagnosis. A crisis showed up in our life. You see, one thing's for certain, crisis will always come in our life. Gandhi said that success is revealed in our moments of defeat. He said, therefore, success can be defined as a series of glorious defeats. When Josh was 5 years old, we sat in the school conference room. Big mahogany table, doctors on one side, teachers on the other. Mom and I were scared. We were young parents and we didn't really know what to expect. And I remember a doctor spoke first, and the doctor said, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, your son has autism. You need to understand your son is not like the other kids. He's not going to learn the way, he's uneducable in many ways, Mr. and Mrs. Brown. You need to understand your son most likely will not graduate high school. He most likely will not graduate high school, and if he does, he will get a special education diploma. There'll be an asterisk by his name. Folks, we have to be really careful the vision we cast for the people in our lives, especially in the moments of crisis. In the moments of kryptonite, when it invades our life, we have to be really careful the vision that we cast for the people in our life. One thing I've learned is that people will live up to or down to the vision we cast for them. I looked over at Lisa and the teardrops were streaming down her face. A young mother had just heard that her son won't graduate high school, that her son won't live out the life that she had planned for him. As a father, I became angry. I started thinking about all of the things my son wasn't going to do, the life he wasn't going to live. Listen, he wasn't going to be the star Little League shortstop like his dad was. He wasn't going to be the star quarterback and captain of the high school football team like his dad was not. And as I was sitting there having a pity party of one, I looked back and the teardrops were gone. And thankfully, moms get a little something extra than dads. And I'll never forget the moment when she looked at her son and she said, you cover your ears. Don't you listen to what he just said, Joshua. That's not your destiny. Listen, mom's got a new plan for you. And I watched as this leader with the title of mother grabbed hold of the storyline that life had given us, and she started to rewrite it. I'm amazed at how many people will take the storyline that life gives them, and they'll get up every day and they'll walk it out as their truth. They'll accept the diagnosis. They'll accept the COVID-19 pandemic. They'll accept the economy. They'll accept other people's opinions, and they'll get up every day and they'll walk it out as their truth, as if it's their new reality. Oh, I watched as this mother, she took that storyline and she started to rewrite it. And she crafted a new vision for her son's life. And for 18 years, I've had the privilege and the honor of watching this leader with the title of mother do her work. And it's amazing when you have a compelling vision for your life. If you have a compelling vision for your life, the resources start to show up. Teachers, tutors, guides, mentors, coaches. They all showed up in our life and one by one poured themselves unselfishly into our boy. And in May of 2016, we were invited to a graduation ceremony. We were there, we were in the upper deck. We watched as 300 kids walked into a gymnasium in Gallatin, Tennessee. 300 kids would graduate that night. We were only looking for one. And we saw him. When he walked into the room, he stood in the doorway. He's 6 feet tall, his cap was crooked. We knew he was ours. And he marched to his seat and he found his seat. And as he sat down, he turned and he gave me a look and he nodded. And then they started calling names. 300 names were called. And we watched as that boy stood up. When they called his name, he stood up and he walked to that stage. With confidence and purpose, he walked to that stage. He grabbed the honors cords that were draped around his neck. And when he got to that stage, Mom and I had made our way down there. We were standing there by the side of that stage, cameras locked and loaded to capture the moment when his foot hit the stage. And when his foot hit the stage, I heard the voice of my father. My father, who used to tell me when I was a boy, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. All that matters is what you believe. You see, the doctors didn't think my son could learn. The teachers didn't think he would graduate, much less with honors. But they underestimated what he believed. And he believed what he believed because a leader with the title of mother was willing to get down in the ditch in the moment of crisis. A leader with the title of mother was willing to grab hold of this kryptonite that had been thrust upon our boy. A leader with the title of mother was willing to do the work that most people are unwilling to do. He walked across that stage and he got his diploma. And he graduated with honors that night. And what that boy has done every moment of his life, because a leader with the title of mother has believed in him, is nothing short of extraordinary. You see, one moment in time can change everything. One moment, one vision, one plan in the midst of crisis can alter someone's trajectory forever. What you do matters in big ways and small ways. When I think about what you do, I think about the fact that we all need each other. In moments of crisis, we need each other. I heard a story about Muhammad Ali one time. Muhammad Ali was on an airplane. He was flying from the East Coast to the West Coast. In the middle of the flight, they hit some turbulence, as planes often do. And when they hit the turbulence, the flight attendant made her way to the champ's seat. And she said, "Mr. Ali, we're experiencing some turbulence. I need you to put your seatbelt on." The champ looked up at her and he smiled real big and he said, "Ma'am, Superman doesn't need a seatbelt." And she smiled and she looked at him and she said, "He doesn't need an airplane either. Please put your seatbelt on." And that story makes me laugh every time I hear it, but it also reminds me of a really powerful truth. We all need help getting where we're going. We all need help getting through the moments of turbulence in our life. We all need help moving from where we are to someplace new and taking others along with us for the journey. We need help getting to where we're going. I'm so glad that you're here and that you do what you do. I'm so glad that you show up and you make life better for the people that you serve and serve with. We need heroes. And more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, the world needs your hero. I want to encourage you to spend time really working on yourself during this season. Spend time figuring out what the next chapter looks like. You see, we don't need to know all the steps. We just need to know the next one. What does this look like when we come out? How do you use this season to make your next event more powerful and more meaningful? How do we use this as a platform, as a jumping off point to reach more people, to dig deeper and give them something that helps them in their times of crisis? Listen, we have an enormous opportunity here to reshape and to refocus, to step back and get perspective on the things that matter. I believe this will make meetings and events not only more needed, but I think it's going to make them so much better, so much richer, because we'll be focused on what's really important. We'll eliminate the periphery. We'll get rid of all the noise. We'll get rid of all the clutter, and we'll zero in on the things that truly make the biggest difference in the lives of people. Because after all, the greatest compliment you can receive is that was the best one ever. And I believe the next event that you do, the next group of people that you influence, it will be the best one ever, because you're becoming the best version of you that you've ever been. Crisis doesn't force us to reinvent. It reveals who we truly are. There's a quote from Batman Begins that says, "It's not who you are underneath, it's what you do that defines you." My question to you is, what will you do that defines you? Use this time to answer two questions. Number one, are you essential? Oh, we've heard a lot about this topic. Are you essential? We've heard a lot about essential workers, but understand what they're talking about are essential roles. What I'm asking is, are you an essential person? Heroes are essential people. Heroes become the best version of themselves. Are you essential to the people at your dinner table? Are you essential to your life partner? Are you essential to the people that you serve and the people that you serve with? Are you an essential person? Will you leave a mark that cannot be erased? The second question, what are you grateful for? You see, in times of crisis, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time thinking about are the things that I'm grateful for. You know, when I'm on the road 200 days a year, it's easy to get caught up in the fact that I have to climb on another plane, that I have to go to another meeting, that I have to have another call, that I have to do this thing that I get to do. And that's what happens when we get tired. That's what happens when we get stressed. But the truth of the matter is, I don't have to do any of those things. I get to do those things. I get to be with people who are there to learn. I get to spend time with people and share this idea of what it means to truly be a hero to the people who mean the most to you. You know, Rabbi Shmuley Boteah says, you are no hero if the people who mean the most to you think the least of you. Oh, I'm so blessed to do what I do. I get to influence other people. I get to share my story with other people. I get to introduce my son and my wife and all of the extraordinary heroes in my life to people and give them a mental model to help them serve the people in their life. I'm blessed and I'm lucky to get to do what I do. And I know that you are too. And we're blessed that you get to do what you do. I'll leave you with one final quote from Robert Frost. Robert Frost said, "The only way out is always through." Listen, the only way we get out of a crisis, the only way we get out of our kryptonite, the only way we get out of these challenging times is through it. And we're going to go through it, or we can grow through it. I'm making a decision to grow through this, to get better, to sharpen the saw, to come out of this as a better version of myself. We can't give what we do not have, and this is a great time to go a little bit deeper with who we are. People don't do business with us for what we do. They come to us for who we are. I know that you're an extraordinary person, and what you do matters in big ways and small ways. I'm blessed to know you. I'm blessed to be partners with you, and I'm blessed to be taking this journey with you. It's been an honor to be with you during this time. I thank you very, very much.
Hello. All right, I'm coming back.
I can hear you.
You can, and now
There
you
you
can see
are.
me.
There
And
you
I've got
are.
my glasses on, so I can see some questions coming in.
Right.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I mean, this is always such a treat to have you speak to any group. We certainly understand and appreciate the importance of engagement right now. That's what this is, right? This is just engaging. You spoke
It's a conversation.
a conversation, and you spoke to it very eloquently about how we cannot wait to get back to in-person live events. But right now we're embracing the opportunity that we have to keep some engagement going. And to, you know, obviously we value the impact of incredible speakers on a stage or here from your office. So we appreciate you. Let's see, anybody, please feel free to send some questions in our way. Thank you. Thank you so far. Lots and lots of kudos, which we expect and appreciate. So thank you all for the kind words, and we love Kevin too. So like I said, he's got a little bit of a cult following. So if you haven't seen him before, now you're in the group and you love Kevin Brown. A couple people are asking about a recording. We will share. It really needs to be used for internal purposes only. It's going to be for a very limited time. And we just, you know, we hope that you respect that and know that this is a virtual presentation, as I mentioned, not his virtual keynote. For those of you that have seen Kevin, you've obviously today seen the difference between the two. We certainly hope that you book Kevin Brown. We want you to. This to me is a blip of what Kevin Brown can do for your colleagues, your clients, your organization. I'm sure you felt the impact today personally. So like I said, this is just a small piece of what he can do for a larger group. So please use it for the opportunity to book him and to maybe share with a couple of people I've mentioned, managing partners and things of that nature that they want to introduce Kevin to. So thank you for that. Let's see, any questions? This was so powerful. I want to watch it all over again. That is very sweet. Great message. Kevin, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, I loved what you just said about not needing to know all of the steps, but needing to know the next step. Can you share with everybody maybe what your next step is, anything that you've got going on, or one thing that you're maybe working on right now during quarantine?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing as leaders, whether it's in my corporate life or what I do now. I think we as leaders often get fooled into thinking that we have to have all the answers, that we have to have this huge plan and we have to know all the steps. And what's going on right now in the world is proof positive that you can have the most eloquent, the most well-designed strategic plan on the planet. But if one thing happens, a pandemic, the economy, it doesn't really matter what it is, it throws the whole plan off. So I had a mentor years ago tell me, he said, look, man, you don't have to know all the steps, you just have to know the next one. And so what I've been focused on, because we don't know what this is going to look like on the backside of coronavirus, all I do know for sure is that my heart tells me meetings are never going to go away. Meetings are an essential part of what we do. You don't talk about being essential, meetings are essential. So what I'm working on is how do we take the message deeper? How do we take this to a completely different level, whether it's through examining what is this kryptonite? What are the things that show up in our life? How can I deliver this in bite-sized ways, whether that's through a podcast, whether that's through videos, whether it's through webinar? Is this the preferred method? Absolutely not. I like to be around people. I mean, even introverts want to go to meetings right now. People are tired of being cooped up. And so I think, to come out of this going, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I can tell you the human spirit's never going to die. The human spirit's never going to go away. And the need for human connection is never going to go away. So I think it's stretching ourselves. I'm not a big fan of this medium, at least not in the past, but if this is the way for now that I can connect with the people who matter to me, by all means. So it's causing me to stretch and grow and to get rid of some preconceived ideas about technology. I was a holdout. I had a flip phone forever.
I love that. So when you say that you're not a big fan, it reminds me of my husband who is on, and he'll laugh at this, but I've been telling people, virtual events to me and live events are like spaghetti squash and spaghetti. So they're very different things. We prepare them differently. We experience them differently. My husband is not a fan of spaghetti squash, but I also think that it's because when I'm serving it to him, it's like, here, this is spaghetti. It's like, no, it's not spaghetti. Now, I love both because I think they both serve a purpose and they're just very different, but I don't think you can pass one off for the other. And that's like that's, I think, a big lesson here as we've been doing virtual events is virtual events are amazing for what they are, but they are different. And my preferred method is a live in person. I love engagement. I love, human contact. And, but it just reminds me of my husband and how he, spaghetti squash is not preferred. It's not spaghetti. So,
well, if you're hungry enough, it's amazing.
Yes, that's true. That is so true. Throw a little some meat sauce on top of it.
You got it.
And, I just want to say thank you too for your vulnerability, always your authenticity, you sharing the stories about Josh and sharing the stories about your mom and your grandmother. There's so much that people can relate to there, whether you are specifically referencing a child with special needs, but any type of adversity that you faced. I know everyone on this call has had something that they've had to overcome, something that was told that this is how it's going to go. And there's been many times in all of our lives where we've taken that information for, you know, the superficial information that it's been given to us. And there's been also times where we've taken that and said, you know what? No, I don't think so. I think this is going to be something different. And so that's my biggest takeaway from you always, is just to rewrite that narrative and just not to fall prey to just being told, you know, how something's going to go. It's really important right now.
Well, what else is important is to remember that every single human being that sits in an event, whether it's virtual or live, every single human being that sits in an audience is either going through something, is about to go into something, or has just come out of something. You know, crisis is not new. This is part of life. And I'm always mindful, every single seat that's filled in an auditorium or a ballroom, there's a story. And the question that I always have before I take the stage is, how can I contribute to that story? Because most people, Jim Rohn said, most people go through life living lives of quiet desperation. Right? People are looking for hope. They're looking for something to plug into. They're looking to be inspired. And most people never give any serious consideration to the fact that they hold the pen in their hand for the story of their life. And so what can we do as communicators, as storytellers? What can we do to help people pen a better chapter in the next story of their life? What can we do to add an exclamation point? What can we do to make a story richer or more meaningful? And it's an extraordinary responsibility that I feel like I have, and that you all have, to help bring that narrative together, especially in times like this and coming out of this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kevin, as always. Thank you to everyone that spent some time with us this morning. We really appreciate your supporting the speaking industry to show the importance of a great speaker and the impact that a great speaker can have, even on a virtual level. So thank you. No questions coming in, just love for Kevin. So we so appreciate that. That's always the way it goes, you know, no questions, just lots of praise. And that comes from us at Goodman Speakers. So again, for any of you that I have not met, Jenna George, president and owner of Goodman Speakers, so thrilled to be bringing you our friend and partner, Kevin Brown, today. We know that you got something amazing out of it. Take it with you today, take it with you this week. And into your next challenge, but hopefully we'll all find the positive, because I just think there's so much out there right now, so many positive lessons and learning opportunities here. So
absolutely.
Happy Thursday, everybody, and
Thank you, Jenna.
See you soon.
Bye, everyone.